Warning, this video was recorded in 2021.
Video games. It's the reason we're all here. It's the reason that you guys are watching this channel in the first place. Probably. I love talking about games, I love talking about game design, I love talking about what makes a game great, I love talking about what makes a game not so great or what could be improved upon. And what's been even more of a part of my personality since I was a child is making a list of things. I have lists of everything. So I have lists of all the games I've played, I have lists of all the movies I've ever seen, of all the anime I've ever seen. And today I'm gonna make a list of my favorite games that came out this year. And just to limit the length of the video, I'm gonna keep it around 5 favorite games along with a few honorable mentions before we get to the number 1 pick. And I hope you guys get my point of view, but I would also very much love to hear you guys' opinions and what you guys thought was the best game that came out this year. I love to hear you guys' opinions, so please do write in the comments if you have a favorite game that wasn't mentioned. But let's kick off the list, shall we? On number 5. A little bit of an underrated game, a game that people might have actually forgotten came out this year and a sort of an unexpected title, but Little Nightmares 2. This Let's Play wasn't my most popular Let's Play on the channel at all, and I know that people are not always into horror, but what makes Little Nightmares 2 stand out so much is that it's not just basic horror in the way that you think of it. It's horror in its visuals, it's beautiful, it's creepy, it's something that you usually have never seen before. And me being just a lover of horror, I completely loved the universe that Little Nightmares 2 set up. It lived up to all the expectations of the first one, but were even better, because now you could control it better. If any of you have ever played Little Nightmares 1, you would know that it was a pain to control, you would fall off of things all the time and you'd get stuck during chases, but that's not really the case anymore. You can just enjoy the experience, it's very fluent, it's not too hard, it all just fits together very well. Plus, Little Nightmares 2 has some of the scariest sections in the entire franchise being those 2 games, but it also just looks gorgeous. The world is huge, everything feels so enormous, it's terrifying, all the creatures are still equally horrible and you want to get around them as best as possible, and some of the segments in that game are absolutely terrifying, such as the asylum with all the different mannequins. Ugh. And despite the fact that you actually have a companion around with you most of the time, the game still manages to be really, really scary, and it has a really crazy outcome as well. I don't know if I'd call it a satisfying outcome, but it does have a crazy twist, and I do love me a crazy twist. Number 4, definitely an underrated game, and a game that I only tried to play briefly on the channel because it didn't catch everyone's attention as much as it did mine, but it is The Artful Escape. An absolutely insane rock ballad game that has some of the coolest music that I've ever seen. The gameplay is very, very simple. You just run around and talk, and then you occasionally like press some buttons in sequence, sort of like Simon Says. And so the gameplay isn't the most interesting thing in the world, but the visuals, oh Maglione, the visuals and the music, it's just so beautiful. And I do think that the glam, like crazy space rock, is a little bit of an unorthodox pick when it comes to picking a soundtrack, so I appreciated it a lot. It's a coming of age and finding your own identity story that is put in one of the craziest ways, and for that reason, it is on my number 4. But on number 3, we actually have a game that I managed to finish on this channel, and it is Everhood. What an absolute trip that game was, and a nightmare to make thumbnails for. I don't remember why, but for some reason it was a nightmare to make thumbnails for. But it was overall a really, really cool game. It had this dark pixelated style to sort of show the trippy dark universe that it's in. It's basically like an apocalypse story sort of coming true. I don't want to spoil too much, but that is sort of the vibe that you're getting as well because of all the dark shadows in the pixel art. It's very cool. All the characters have these deep shadows and it just looks really neat. But the world in the story isn't actually what sells Everhood. I don't actually like the story of Everhood that much. It was kind of cool, but I think it was trying to be a little too abstract, a little too vague, which didn't really work out for it in the end because it wasn't exactly sure where the moral of the story was going. It does sort of end up taking this like the ends justify the means, genocide is okay sort of stances, which I do not think is what it wanted. But what actually does sell Everhood is its banging, crazy, amazing music, and it's absolutely insanely psychedelic gameplay. There are people that tell me that it isn't a rhythm game in a way, but it totally is. The music goes along so well with all the beats. It's basically a reverse Guitar Hero where you have to dodge all the different kinds of blocks that are thrown at you. But the attacks, the way it works, the way you dodge, the way you fight back, it all changes all the time. And even the whole arena, the arena that you're fighting in, can twist and turn visually, making it very hard for you to see exactly what's going on. And it's really, really cool. Do not play if you're epileptic though. But for those crazy psychedelic, absolutely completely mind-blowing experiences, Everhood ends up on my number 3. A really cool RPG, and I think that you should absolutely play it if you're up for something trippy and insane. And on my number 2, we have a game that I unfortunately didn't get to play on the channel. I'm very sorry, but it is a game that I have to bring up because I just am so fond of this game. It's a lovely game, and I'm so happy that I got to play it this year. And it is It Takes Two. My friend actually bought this game for us earlier in the year so we could play it together. And it's something that I regret to my heart not recording, because it's the best co-op experience that I think I've ever had in a video game, ever. There's no other way to put it than it is the co-op game. It's a wonderfully simple story about a divorcing mom and dad who get turned into toys and have to fix their relationship in order to get back to their bodies. And despite the game lasting a full 8 to 9 hours with full split screen, it never gets tiring. It's just a wonderful game, and while the game has its lows and its highs, of course, there are some segments that are better than others, it's just a good game all the way through and through. The ending and the story in itself is actually not that interesting, but that doesn't really matter because the gameplay and the fun that you have as just playing these two characters and the dialogue that they have with each other and the wonderful worlds that you explore together, it's just so delightful. And I swear, even the mini games in this game you could spend hours on. It's a player versus player thing, so you have to fight each other and you get competitive against each other, and it's just so fun playing all these different mini games and exploring the world that the game lets you very freely roam sometimes. So yeah, it's lovely, and it is my favorite co-op experience that I can remember, so that is why this game is absolutely on my second place. Now, before we get to my first and favorite game of the year, which some of you guys might already suspect what that is, I want to get across a few honorary members that didn't quite make it to the list for one reason or another. My first honorary member is Chicory, a game that I also didn't play all the way to completion, which is why it's only an honorary member. I technically didn't beat it because it's quite a long game, but of what I have played it, I've enjoyed every bit of it. It's colorful, it's about painting depression away for God's sake, and you have the lovely soundtrack by the goddess Lena Raine, and it's just delightful. If you want to have a cozy, relaxing game that is just plain wholesome, it's like playing Paper Mario, then definitely play Chicory. As a second honorary member, we have a Friday Night Funkin', a game that technically did come out last year, but really picked up in like the beginning of this year. I thought the concept, while being so simple, was very, very cool. It had some good music, and it sort of felt like a comeback for like the Newgrounds, very old retro Newgrounds style to come back into mainstream video games. And I really liked it. It was fresh despite being a very simple concept. The reason it's only honorary though is because it was technically released last year, but only really picked up this year, and then also because the absolute best of the content from that game is mostly made by the community, so it gets to be an honorary member. And then as our third and final honorary member, I have Deltarune Part 2. I wanted to put this as its own because it's just lovely. I enjoyed every bit of it, recording it with you guys and actually watching the stream and seeing you guys' reaction to my reaction. Very meta, I know, but it was one of my favorite things that I did this year with this channel. I loved watching those live streams with you guys, and it's been like the most community engaging experience that I've had with a video game with you guys for a long time, and I can't wait till the next part gets out. The reason it's only an honorary member though is because it is only a part 2. I don't want to put it as like the best thing because there's just too much missing. We need to see more parts of the game come out before we can judge the story as its whole, but it was still a very funny game, a really neat game, a really dark game at times. But yeah, the writing is still good, the characters are still good, the battles are still fun, so yeah, it's exactly what I hoped it would be. But now to move on to my first and final favorite game of this year that I've played this year, then I have to give that title to Omori. Yeah. I know that it's technically cheating to put this one on the list of top games this year, but Omori was released by December 25th last year. It only had about a week in 2020, and I myself didn't finish the game before I was well into 2021, so I'm just gonna rate it with games that I've played this year. And my god, that game. Omori is my absolute favorite game of the year, despite it also being the game that I can find the absolute most problems with out of pretty much all the games on this list. And it's actually a game that's pretty hard to talk about from a review standpoint, because Omori is one of those games where the payoff is so goddamn good. It completely makes you forget the drab and the annoyances and all the bulk of unnecessary content that it put you through. There isn't really an easy way to put it, but Omori is a 20 to 30 hour beast of an RPG game. It could have very, very easily been like a 12 hours or less game. The game story takes place around this kid who, after a tragic event, has isolated themselves from their friends and family in their own home and daydreamed their life away for years, and has finally decided to come out and reconnect with the world and their old friends and see how they're all doing today and how they're each dealing with what happened back then. The game doesn't tell you what happened, so the idea is actually that you go throughout the game trying to piece together the mystery and understand what happened back then. And it's a really intriguing story that you just want to learn more and more about, but it is broken up by these vast dream segments that take place in between the days when the kid is asleep. And these sort of, to some degree, sometimes irrelevant segments can unfortunately last anywhere from 40 minutes and all the way up to 3 hours. And it has this very annoying curve where the more interesting the main story gets, the longer these in-between segments take to get through. Those segments are long, and they feel very long, and they're actually tough to get through. I admit that I used a walkthrough several times in order to get through those segments faster, and it did actually almost make me drop the game or drop recording the game because it was so slow paced. But once you got through that, and once you got to where the game actually starts to pick up, where the story really starts getting intriguing and you feel like you're so close to piecing the mystery together, that's when the game gets amazing. There is no way on gosh's green earth that I could ever dare to spoil the ending or the conclusion or like the twist of that game. That's something that you're gonna have to experience it on your own, but I will say, once you got to that part, it all just felt worth it. Once you reached that crescendo, all the build up, even if it lasted hours, it felt worth it. And I remember that game still to this day. I recall it often. And when I did finally beat it, I could barely sleep for like 2 nights just because the game was on my mind so very much. It has been a long time since the story of a game knocked me on my butt that bad, and I don't know when it'll happen again. So I just feel like I had to talk about this game again. I had to bring it up. If this video is just to talk about Omori, I don't care. I'm gonna sit here and talk about Omori for ages. I love that game. And I hope you guys agree with me. But if you don't, please do let me know. This is all that I got for my top 5 plus honorary members of games this year. I felt like it was a good year for games. I don't feel like it was too slow. And I found a bunch of favorites throughout the year, and I'm really happy about that. I'm so excited to see what 2022 brings. And yeah, I can't wait to hopefully experience it along with you guys. But yeah, hopefully you guys are willing to join me on a bunch of new fun digital adventures in 2022. I'm excited to see what the coming year has in store for us hashtag gamers, because I actually have no idea at this point. I haven't really kept up on the sort of up and coming games, but I am excited. If you have any sort of games that you're excited for in 2022, or if you have any sort of games that you feel like I missed this year, please do write them in the comments. I love reading them. But other than that, genuinely thank you all so much for watching this year, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.